Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Find Your Finish Line. I'm your host, Mike Riley, and thank you very much for joining us today for a very special podcast. You know, we're in the throes of summer right now, so you've got to be smart about your hydration, especially hydrating before you go out for a workout. People make that mistake so many times. They'll go for a ride or a run, and they're a half hour, 45 minutes into the workout, and they go, oh, I'm a little thirsty. Well, your body by then is pretty depleted. So make sure you hydrate before you get out. And also, you lose your appetite when it gets warmer. For some reason, we always seem to lose our appetite. Make sure you keep the nutrition flowing during your workouts, before and after, so that body is ready for tomorrow's good training session. I'd like to wish the best of luck. We've got 2 new podcasts in the triathlon world that are coming out. As a matter of fact, one of them is out already. It is the Ironman Insider, hosted by Matt Lieto. You know Matt and his expert commentary on the Ironman broadcast for all the Ironmans and Ironman 70.3s. So the best of luck to Matt and Ironman on their new podcast that just came out. And also, professional Sky Monch. She is launching her new podcast, which is called Sky's the Limit. That's going to be one to listen to. Sky, a professional that has done so well in the circuit over the years. She won't be racing this year because she just announced that she and her husband, Matt, are expecting their first child in November. Congratulations to you two on that. And if you want to listen to Sky on a podcast, we recorded on Find Your Finish Line back in May. And now on to our great guest today. Join me every month for the inspiration to find your finish line. Very excited to have my guest on today. His name is Stephen Pivnick. He's the author of the best-selling book, Built to Finish, which I had the honor and pleasure of reading the audiobook version for him. He's also the founder and CEO of a software company called Binary Tree, which he built from the ground up and sold. He's finished over a dozen Ironman races, including Kona, avid climber. Next year, he will be attempting to summit Mount Everest. Stephen Pivnick, welcome to Find Your Finish Line.
Mike, thank you so much for having me.
Well, it is my pleasure. You are a stud, and I love talking to studs.
Well,
Stephen,
it takes one to know one.
Yeah, I always ask my guests the very first question, no matter what time of day it is. What kind of workout did you get in today, Stephen? Did you?
Today was lower body, a bunch of squats, a bunch of lunges, a bunch of reverse lunges, and then to tap it all off, I walked upstairs to my apartment, 20 flights.
I love that. 20 flights of stairs up to your apartment. Do you carry the groceries up that high?
You know what? As I get closer to Everest, I will be doing these stairs with heavy loads, and I'm not joking. That is that's part of the training plan.
Oh, I love that, with 30-pound barbells in your hands, huh?
Yeah.
Well,
it'll probably be like a 50-pound pack, but yes, going up these stairs with a weighted pack is in the plan for sure.
Well, Stephen has an amazing journey, an amazing story. He's from Ukraine, and his family, being of Jewish faith, came to the U.S. to escape anti-Semitism of Russia. He's out of Odessa, Russia. And Stephen, you know, that built a foundation for you that you obviously still use today. But how old were you when your family did start to make that journey over to the U.S.?
Yeah, we left when I was 2 years old, and I turned 3 in Italy, because we waited for 6 months in Italy to get our final papers approved. And then so I came to America when I was 3.
And that was your mom and dad and your grandparents?
Mom, dad, grandparents, and my mom's twin sister, so my aunt.
And your aunt, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a long journey. You know, once you understood it all, like in later years, you must have really had a incredible amount of respect for your parents and grandparents, didn't you?
Oh, I was beyond grateful. You know, once I started to learn, what the differences were and what I wouldn't have had we not made that move, I just became, my sense of gratefulness towards them, increased on a yearly basis, the more I learned about what life was like over there.
Well, when did that happen? You know, us when we're growing up, uh, our parents don't know anything. You know, when you're adolescents in your grade school, you start getting into high school, and you go, well, maybe my parents know a little bit. How old were you when you started realizing, like, you know, my parents are heroes?
Yeah. If I had to pick a number, I'd probably say around 6 or 7
Wow.
is when I started picking up on things and really just paying closer attention to a lot of the stories that they shared, because they continuously shared stories about the good old days, right? And the old, not the good, I'm sorry, the old country, the bad old days. So I think at the age of 6 or 7, I really started, picking up on the nuances that they were talking about and comparing them to modern day and really appreciating the differences and the improvements.
Well, your family ended up in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn, which is the largest, Russian-speaking like capital of New York, and in Brighton Beach is where you grew up. Your family kind of struggled to make it like a lot of immigrants that came to the U.S. Your dad had an auto repair business and then lost that and a limo service. What did that teach you? And we're going to get into your company. Seeing your dad work at those jobs and struggle through it. What did that teach you about you eventually running your own company?
Yeah, I mean, one of the many things I got from my father and my grandfather is a work ethic. I mean, I saw them work every single day, from sunrise to sundown, and without ever, and including Saturdays, most Saturdays. I think they took one day off. They took Sunday off. And the thing I remember most is never hearing about the word sick day. I mean, I remember being driven to school by my father with him coughing up a lung, and he would never, use that as an excuse to take a day off. And same with my grandfather. So there was no such thing as a sick day, and it was just a crazy work ethic all day, every day, to put food on the table and to keep a roof over our heads. So I thank them tremendously for that.
Well, Stephen, in your book, you talk about how you discovered and what you call the grind because of your parents and grandparents, and that grind is something that really wasn't taught to you. You watched it, and then you wanted to repeat it in your life, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I say in the book that, you learn the grind by watching the grind. And everything that matters requires a little bit of grinding, and sometimes a lot of grinding. And if you're not where you want to be, you probably haven't grinded enough yet. So it just, everything worthwhile is going to require some of it. And there's benefits to it at the end.
You know, you're taking me off my question topic when you said that, though. I can see you up on a stage because Stephen is an excellent public speaker in front of corporates and groups and things like that. Sometimes when you're looking out at the audience and you're talking about that, like, hey, if you're not where you want to be, you haven't put in enough grind yet. Don't you sometimes see blank looks on people's faces from the audience, like, what's he talking about? I'm working hard.
No, it's a combination of both. As long as you had, as a speaker, and you probably know this as well, being a speaker yourself, as long as you get a handful of nods and some connectivity with a small portion of the audience, your message is kind of landing. And it all depends on, what people's perspectives are. Some people totally understand this topic of, grinding and work ethic and perseverance and just getting it done. And others don't, and which is fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinion and their understanding. But, when I see those half a dozen heads nod, I'm happy.
Oh, good. Well, some of your first jobs, I mean, you went to work early at a newspaper route. You were a cashier at a grocery store, a pizza delivery driver. But all of a sudden, you started becoming interested in, you're a techie. You started becoming interested in computers. At an age when people didn't know how to spell the word computer, for goodness sakes. And all you wanted to do was jump into it, head and toe. And then you convince your dad to buy you, I don't know how many in the audience are going to know this, Stephen, a Commodore 64. Because really all you wanted to do with that computer was take it apart and put it back together again and tinker with it. Why do you think that love for computers and technology was in you? Why do you think that happened?
I don't know. It's just one of these things, like you all of a sudden you start a hobby and you become like really, really good at it. For some, it was sports. Me, I was not athletic at all. I mean, I didn't start this entire Ironman journey until I was 40. Um, if I just, I think somebody else had one, and I played with it at their house, and I saw the code that was being written, and I'm like, wow, that seems incredibly interesting and challenging. Let me check this out. So I begged my father, because he didn't understand what computers were. I mean, like you said, most people didn't. And I forget what it cost. It was probably a couple of $100, maybe
Probably, yeah.
$180. But in 1985-ish, that's a lot of money. So
Yeah,
yeah, I convinced him to buy me one, and he did. And it became it's embarrassing to say, but it became my best friend, because I spent more hours behind the Commodore 64 than with any other human.
well, your best friend then turned you into a type of person that you started building a company with. But then you're in high school, but you decided not to go to college, or you quit. Well, I forgot.
Yeah, I think so. The natural progression was to go to college. I
Yeah.
applied to a technical university called Polytech in Brooklyn. It was a really good engineering school, and I actually got accepted. And I remember like it was yesterday, reading the acceptance letter up to my parents,
Wow.
and them just saying, "Oh, well, that's great. Congratulations for getting accepted, but you can't go to Polytech. We can't afford that." So they burst my bubble immediately. So my engineering future was in jeopardy. So I just went to a local, community school for literally a couple of weeks. And then I didn't know what I was going to major in. So I just picked business administration. And then my mother found out about this computer programming school, which was basically a vocational school specializing in computers that promised job placement. She's like, why waste 4 years of your life in college not knowing what you want to be? Go learn professional computer programming and get a real job. So I said, hey, my parents are giving me a get out of jail free card to not go to college for 4 years and go play around with stuff that I love. I'll take it.
Well, that was pretty insightful for your mom and dad to even think about it that way, wasn't it?
Yeah, I give them a lot of credit, because like, again, being an immigrant family, most would place a much greater value on education, and a formal education and a real degree. And for my father he was a little bit disappointed. Like, he wanted his son to have a degree, even though he didn't understand what that meant and what that would entail or lead to. But my mother was a little bit more entrepreneurial at the time. And it's because she's like, you know what? We're hurting as a family. And we were. My father had hit upon some hard times. You need to get a job, a real job, not the supermarket job. You need to get a real job sooner rather than later. So go learn how to program professionally and bring home some better dough.
It is an incredible story. And that led you to start figuring out more and more in the technology side of the business. And what year was it that you ended up starting Binary Tree software company?
I ended up starting my company. So I worked for several years for other companies. And then I got bitten by the entrepreneurial bug and started my own company in 1993.
I've had a lot of people ask me, because people I've had on the show, I had that entrepreneurial spirit. I had the bug, like you say. Where do you think that comes from? Not wanting to work for that other person or have a boss, or where do you think that comes from inside of someone? You know what? I want to do this on my own. Even though it's scary as hell, I'm going to go do this on my own.
Yeah, I mean, I really felt that if I stayed along my current path, I would get raises. I would get more money, on an annual, basis, but it would still be limited to me, right? The amount I could bring home would be limited to the amount of hours that I can work and I can produce. So I felt that when you start your own company, you stop becoming the limiting factor to what you can produce, because once you hire staff and then hire more staff and then they start generating revenue for you, you're able to scale your income generating ability. So I think that's what really hit me. So the financial aspect hit me, but also the customer satisfaction aspect hit me, because I felt I was doing work for these customers, and I felt that I can be doing, so much more if I had a company behind me. So again, I wanted to scale the actual service that I was delivering to customers, and I felt that that would be accomplished by having my own company do that.
When you broke away to do your own company, were you scared?
Yeah, I was pretty scared. I mean, it was a risky move. It was interesting. The company I was working for, I was actually having layoffs at the time, and I prayed that I would get one of the packages because that would give me 6 months runway, 3 to 6 months runway to start the company. And I get called into the executive's office one day, and he goes, "Steven, we've decided to keep you." And I'm like, "Oh no!" I was praying that they would cut me. So, and I felt really, really bad because other people were losing their jobs.
Yeah.
So I slept on it over the weekend, and I said, "You know what? I'm gonna do somebody a solid, and I'm going to let me go and keep somebody else instead because I'm gonna leave anyway." So it was riskier than it could have been, but it worked out.
So what gave you the idea to put together an SOS service for software company like Binary Tree?
So when originally we started as just a consulting company. So back in the day, there was no such thing as SaaS or software as a service.
Mm-hmm.
If a company in today's day and age, if a company wants a sales system, they go online and they subscribe to Salesforce.com, for example. If they want a human resources system, they go and they subscribe to Workday, for example. Back in the 90s, there was no app store. There was no availability of systems. If a large company wanted to automate a business process, they needed to write it from scratch. And that's what we did. We wrote custom programs for large companies that wanted to automate their business processes. So that was the genesis of the company. And then eventually we were hired to write this custom program to convert some email data, which sounds really boring, and it was, but that tiny little custom project turned into an entire suite of products to help companies convert email data, which became a huge trend in the 90s and 2000s, and still is.
With people like IBM and Microsoft, for goodness sake. So you had giant clients, and the word is you were the closer. You were the one that wanted to go in and close all those deals. Why did you feel that was going to be your role? Obviously, you knew the technology and everything, but you wanted to be the one to close.
I mean, at the end of the day, it was my company, and nobody loves your company more than you do, no matter how. I mean, there's a lot of employee satisfaction that we had, and a lot of super motivated and dedicated folks. But at the end of the day, you kind of want to be the one leading the charge, and you also want to show the customer, right? So I wanted to show the customer at that time. At first, it was IBM, and then later Google, and then later Microsoft. You want to show these large customers of yours that the man at the top, like the owner, one of the partners, has skin in the game is putting his personal word behind the commitment that the company is making to deliver on whatever projects are at hand. So I just felt that I needed to be that person.
Well, company-wise, I've got a couple more questions, and we'll jump into your endurance world. Starting at 40 years old, I'm talking with Steven Pivnick, entrepreneur, Ironman, mountain climber. You had 200 people working for you, and I believe you told me that you knew everyone and everyone's name. Is that correct?
I think most. I forget the number where it just became numerically impossible to know everybody. I definitely knew, if you showed me a name and you said, "Does this person work at your company?" I would be able to say yes or no, 100%. So I knew the names. Did I know them all personally? I mean, that was just impossible, just because we were a virtual company before virtual became popular. Right now, everybody's virtual. We became virtual shortly after 9/11. So we saw each other often. We had a lot of regional meetings. We had departmental meetings. We had a company-wide holiday party almost every single year. So I did get a chance to meet everybody, but it's impossible to maintain really close relationships with all. But yes, if you showed me an org chart, I would know almost every single name.
I don't know what the big deal is, Steven. I call out 2,500 names at the finish line. I get them all correct. I don't know. What the heck? 200 people, that should be a piece of cake.
Touche. I love that. I'm going to use that line repeatedly. Thank you. Mike Riley said I should be ashamed for not knowing 200 names.
Come on, don't get me in trouble. So what advice, I know you're a mentor, and you're speaking a lot. What advice do you have for other entrepreneurs looking to scale their business and even plan a successful exit like you did?
I mean, the biggest piece of advice is, surround yourself with people that have been there, done that.
Ugh.
I made the mistake earlier on thinking that I know everything and nobody can teach me anything, right? And a lot of entrepreneurs, have that type of cockiness about them. Just, put that hubris aside and surround yourself with folks that have been in your shoes, because there's plenty out there, either from an advisory perspective or from a management team perspective. Like I like to use the example in sales. If your company is, let's say, at $10 million in sales, and you still have the same sales leader that was with you from the get-go, I mean, God bless them. They've done a fantastic job for you, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be harder for them to get the company to 30 million versus bringing in an executive that's already run a sales organization at a 30 or 40 or $50 million company. So a key requirement for advisors and executive leadership is folks that have operated, at, or more importantly, above the level you're at today.
Wow. Well, during all this time, you did discover kind of a new world for Stephen Pivnick, the world of endurance. And you were at work and you heard about one of your workmates that had run a race over the weekend. Tell us how you thought about that. Like, what are you kidding me? How could she do that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I heard her name is Rita. I still keep in touch with her.
Oh, good.
I love her. I'm so thankful for what she got me into. When I heard that she completed a triathlon, I was shocked. I'm like, how does a mere mortal complete a triathlon? Isn't this event exclusively held in the Olympics by these chiseled athletes? And she educated me the following Monday that no, you could there's all these websites that are out there. Active.com is a current one. Triathlon Finder, Beginner Triathlete, there's many. You go, you find the local race, you pay the registration fee, and you compete. And I couldn't believe it was that easy. And I signed up for one, and it was a sprint on the Jersey Shore. I finished it. I was super, super happy that I finished it. And that night I emailed her to thank her for the motivation. And she responded with, I knew you can do it, and I'm sure we'll see you in Kona one day. I had no idea what she meant by that. So I Googled Kona and triathlon. And then all of these motivational YouTube videos start coming up from you announcing finishers in Hawaii. And it just blew my mind. It's like, right there and then, just like when I saw that Commodore 64 for the first time, I said, I want one. I said, I don't know how, but some way, I will cross the finish line in Kona, Hawaii.
And that's only after you did a sprint. Did you even train for that sprint, Stephen?
I trained for 3 months.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll give you that. That's good.
I mean, I knew how to ride a bicycle, and 12 miles was no big deal. I could not swim. I mean, I wasn't afraid of the water, but I had no form or endurance in the water. So it took me 3 months to be able to swim 32 laps or 800 meters, which was the sprint. And then I think I jogged the majority of the 5K just to get it done.
What went through your mindset, your spirit, your heart when you did that? Did you believe that this is now going to be a part of me for the rest of my life?
During that day, I had no idea. During that day, I just wanted to get to the finish line. And when I did, it was literally one of the first, other than skiing, I really didn't participate in any sorts of sports until then. I played basketball occasionally with some friends, maybe some baseball, like tiny amount. But I'd never been at a sporting event like that where I got to cross the finish line. Somebody announced my name. I got the finisher, the medal. My family was there cheering for me. It was just such a incredible experience. And even then, I didn't know for sure, but I was pretty confident that I would do that again, at least like do another sprint. And then when I learned about Ironman, then I'm like, oh my God, this is going to become my life because this is going to be a long journey.
But then you did a lot of running races too, because I know you ran the New York City Marathon multiple times. Did you find the same? Did you find running gave you the same endorphins that triathlon did?
100, not as much, but the longer the race, the more the endorphins. I mean, the Ironman distance really scared the hell out of me when I first learned about it. I'm like, how the hell am I going to do 140.6 miles, worth of swimming, biking, and running? So I did a whole bunch of, shorter things leading up to it, including a marathon. I knew that, an Ironman has a marathon at the end. So I'm like, you know what? Let me go see if I can just do a marathon alone. And that gave me the confidence to be able to add a marathon onto a 112-mile bike, onto a 2.4-mile swim.
I love that. People have told me so many times, they go, I ran a marathon, so now I can do the marathon in an Ironman. And I go, dude, you got to swim in a 112-mile bike before the marathon. Oh, yeah, I know, but at least I ran a marathon. So even though it kind of gave you a mindset that, well, I ran 26.2, I can do it again. But then people afterwards tell me, well, I didn't run as much as I thought I would. I walked a little bit on that marathon. All this time, you're successful in your business. You're working a lot of hours. You're getting your training in. You have 2 beautiful daughters, a wife. How the heck did you juggle it all?
It was a huge juggling act, and there was a lot of prioritization required. A lot of my training was in the early morning hours. So during the week, it was really easy to wake up. It was easier to watch less TV at night and wake up earlier to train. So the weekly trainings weren't that hard. The biggest toll that my training took on the family was the long rides and runs on Saturday and Sunday. So Saturdays were pretty much shot because that typically had anywhere from a 50 to 100-mile bike ride in it, followed by a very long nap. And then Sunday had the long run. So I think that was where the biggest sacrifice was made. But I was super, super fortunate that I had an incredibly supportive family behind me, and they contributed to this journey.
Well, they must have seen that husband and dad turned into somebody that they really liked. Or did you change in a way? Did your demeanor change? Did your attitude? Did you feel you became a better man because of that?
I think I became a little bit more interesting because everybody wants to hear the stories, right? I mean, to this day, if I don't see somebody for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, after the initial hellos, like, hey, what's next, Stephen? Like, what are you doing next? What's your next adventure? So everybody always wanted to hear about the next race or the next mountain or the next craziness that I was up to.
So what was your first Ironman you did, though?
The first Ironman was Lake Placid in 2011.
And then how many years after that did Kona come about?
So Lake Placid was 2011 and Kona was October 22. So 11 years later.
Did it just, a lot of people, they wait a long time, and after a while they get despondent because, you got to be motivated for a long time, and you did for 11 years. Did you always know you were going to get to Kona? Did you ever get despondent and say, you know what, I'm doing Ironmans. Why do I have to go to Kona?
No, I mean, I wanted to go to Kona from day one. And at the time when I first started, the legacy lottery wasn't around. It was just a regular lottery. So just finish a race, get a lottery ticket. So I'm like, I'm going to race every single year, several times a year until I hit this thing. And then I was, so I think the first 3 races, I didn't get a Kona slot. I kept racing because that was the plan. I'm going to keep, because I love just doing any Ironman. And one of these days I'm going to hit this lottery and get the Kona, because there's no way I was going to qualify. My motto is not fast, not last. Yeah. I do it to finish. I have no athletic background. I can't complete an Ironman in my age group. It would be like 10 hours or 10 and a half hours. That's impossible. So when the legacy lottery came about, I was ecstatic. I'm like, now I have a very, very clear path to Kona. At the time, all I needed to do was, I think, 8 more or 9 more.
Oh, wait. Like, only 9 more days? 8 more or 9 more.
I said, I already have 3 or 4 under my belt. They were all fantastic. I'm traveling to like wonderful parts of the world to race. I'm having this great racing experience with my family, combined with like a mini vacation. 8 more of these? Like, bring it on.
Yeah, you'd have the same attitude, Stephen, if you'd only done 1 Ironman, for goodness sake. So don't tell me that. You were there. And then you get the Kona. And Was it what you had imagined or what people had told you when you hit that island, or did it hit you like, are you kidding me?
It was everything I thought it was going to be, and then some. Up until that point, I've obviously watched the World Championship on NBC every single year. I've rewatched a lot of them. I've watched almost every single YouTube video out there. I almost know the dips and the potholes on Ali'i Drive. I know where the turns are on the Queen K Highway just by watching on the video, so many times. So when I finally got there, it was like literally living in a dream, because I've had this dream for so many years, and now I'm in the middle of it and just experiencing it, and it was just euphoric.
It's a special place. That's absolutely for sure.
Yeah.
Even though you're in the running game, you've done a lot of New York City marathons, you've done a lot of triathlons and Ironmans and Kona. Then all of a sudden you were on a business trip and you needed to get a workout and you went for a hike. Well, there was another thing that hooked you, wasn't it?
I mean, I've always liked the outdoors, but when I was on a trip out west and I went hiking on Mount Rainier, and I saw this, majestic
Beautiful
mountain with alpine-like conditions, with with all this, snow-covered on top, and these insane trails with these great views. I'm like, oh my God, when I saw that tippy top, I started researching, how I actually summit this thing. And I found that it's relatively simple. You take a training class right there on Mount Rainier. It's a 2-day training class. They teach you the ins and outs, basics of, mountaineering. And then it's a 2-day attempt to summit it. And I did that. And once I stood at the top of this mountain after a pretty long ordeal it was 2 days of intense climbing, to get there, or mountaineering, it's called. I said, this is incredible. I need to throw this into the mix and try to get to some of the big boys, some of the 7 summits in the world.
Did your background of endurance help you with that on the heart rate and all that good stuff?
Yeah. It helped tremendously. I definitely think. I mean, without it, I would have had a much harder go of mountaineering without the endurance foundation that I built up by then.
You are your best motivator, because just like when you heard about Kona, oh my gosh, I'm going to do Kona. Now you want to climb the 7 summits of the world because they're out there for you, and you took that on. But have you gotten them all?
No, I don't have them all yet. Yeah, so as soon as I got to the top of Rainier, obviously Everest entered my mind. I'm like, someday, somehow, I'm going to get to Everest. But you can't just go to Everest. That's when people die. It's the ones that climb for the first time. Those are unfortunately, you hear these horror stories. These are the rich people that got their permits, and they really don't have a lot of mountaineering experience, or they didn't go with a reputable company. So there's, just like I had a very long path to Kona, I'm on a very long path to Everest, which is finally, coming to a head, because I'm going to, after summiting some of the other mountains like Kilimanjaro and Aconcagua, and going to Alaska, Denali twice, I'm finally on a path to Everest in May of 25.
Wow, and that is an everyday training. Does it weigh heavy on your mind, even though it's so far out? Like, I've got to. It's not like you want to miss workouts, is it?
Oh no! So I'm fortunate in that I failed on Denali once due to lack of training. So I was undertrained for my last trip out to Denali, and I was in a hurt locker all day, every day on that trip, to the point that when we got to high camp, which was 19,000 feet, the lead guide said, "You're not coming with us tomorrow to attempt a summit because you're not in good enough shape, and I don't want to send you home in a body bag." And that was super, super humbling. I mean, I knew she was going to say that. B, it was a dose of humility, saying, you know what, I deserve this. So I waited at a high camp in my tent while they attempted a summit. Unfortunately, they got to like 20,000 feet. They were 1,000 feet short of the summit, and bad weather turned them around. Which is unfortunate. But when you go with a reputable company, they're not going to take any chances and risk your life. So they turned everybody around. But my point was, I was undertrained, and so I'm almost glad that I had that experience, because I do not want, that will not happen on Everest. I will train harder than I ever trained to be in the best shape of my life for that.
Well, the losses and the failures in our lives teach us a lot, and that one seemed to teach you a ton, huh?
Oh yes,
Wow.
definitely. I never want to be in that much pain or in that kind of weakest link position going forward. So Everest, here I come.
Everest, here you come. We have a good friend, Dave Downey, who's producing the show. He's listening on, and a lot of us do. Luis Alvarez, who's done an Ironman in every continent. There's an Ironman, and he's climbed all 7 summits, including Everest. And he summited that. Had some tough physical problems afterwards coming down, but he's fine now doing Ironmans again. So if you want to be hooked up with Luis Alvarez, we can certainly do that if you want to talk to him about his summit.
Oh, I will definitely take you up on that. Everybody I talk to that says that they know somebody who summited, I ask them for the contact information and I have a call with them immediately, because I'm doing as much due diligence as I possibly can to ensure the success of this climb.
I'll bet. So this whole year now, with next May being the going to Everest, will you do anything? Will you get any running races or do any triathlons, or is it all going to be climbing?
Yeah, so I don't have any Ironmans on the calendar yet.
Yes.
I say yet because things change with me all the time. I'm doing this race called the SOS. It's in New Paltz, New York. It's a very unique triathlon. At 99.9 or swim, bike, run. This one is bike, swim, run, swim, run, swim, run.
Oh.
And the swim, run, there's no transitions. So you swim and you run in the same clothes and sneakers. So there's one transition. You get out of your bike gear, you get into whatever you want to swim and run in for the rest of the day. And so it's unique from that perspective.
How long is it? How long does it take?
The distances aren't horrible. The bike is 30 miles. The first swim is a mile. The first run is 5 miles. And then the distance is reduced a little bit. So then it's a half-mile swim, a 3-mile run, and then like another half-mile swim, and maybe like another 2 or 3
after
mile
a few
run.
runs, I go, I ain't getting back in that water. I'm afraid to get back in that water.
Yeah, it's good. It's going to be interesting from that perspective, and it's in late September, and the weather should be good. If it's going to be like a chilly or wet day, and then it's going to be miserable.
Stephen, do you have a mentor, someone that you go to, and whether it is about life, whether it's about working out, whether it's about business, someone that you have as a mentor?
I would say my rabbi. So I'm not incredibly religious, but we try to follow, as much of our customs as possible. And after my father died, I really got close with the rabbi that actually bat mitzvahed our younger daughter, and and just started, interacting with him regularly. And I really, consider him my mentor in all aspects of life. It's amazing. He knows. He's never run a business. He's never climbed a mountain. But when I ask him for advice in these areas, he always has words of wisdom.
You can't figure that out, can you? It's like, well, how do you know what to tell me there? He hasn't done what I've done.
Yeah, but sometimes
Stephen,
they just know.
Your daughters, you've got 2 of them, 2 beautiful girls, and what do you want them to learn from their dad's life?
I just want them to learn, and they are, that larger than life goals are possible to be accomplished. So there should be no fear in setting big goals, as long as you have the courage, motivation, and perseverance to go after them. So I've proven that with enough blood, sweat, and tears, sometimes literally, you can accomplish really big things. So. And they're slowly, but they're picking up on it. My daughter recently quit her job and started her own company. Wow. I'm proud of her for doing that. She's 2 New York City marathons and 170.3 under her belt, which is awesome. The older one did a triathlon with me also in New Jersey, so she wasn't bitten by the bug as much as the younger one was. She was in the one and done category in triathlons, but she's pursuing her speech pathology career and doing great there. So again, just want them to
That's
aim for the stars.
Well, your book, Built to Finish, with the subtitle, How to Go the Distance in Business and Life. The number one question that I used to get asked is, what inspired you to write a book? Why'd you want to put it all down in words, Stephen?
You know what? The number one reason was so I can, to give me a little bit more credibility to get on stage. I found that most public speakers always have a book. And I felt that, you know what, if I want to become a public speaker, I need to write a book. And by the way, it's going to be a fun project anyway, just to memorialize my story in the hopes of inspiring others, right? So I love to share this story on stage, and I love the feedback that I get when people come up to me afterwards saying, you know what, I've had this thing on my back burner for the last 5 or 6 years. I'm finally going after it. That's the most rewarding feedback in the world. So I'm so glad.
What's the number one, the main line theme you wanted to have in it throughout the whole book?
Think big.
Those two words, they work.
Yeah, exactly. Think big. I mean, I don't have many regrets with my business. My only regret is not thinking bigger.
Well,
I'm incredibly happy with the journey and the sale and all that, but it could have been so much bigger.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to change that to think higher now, because there's 29,000 feet waiting for you in May. So think higher.
There you go. Think higher.
If you were stranded on a flat piece of land surrounded by water where you could swim, bike, and run all day, or surrounded by a land full of mountains, which one would you choose?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I only have one choice. I think I would take. I think I would take the island, because this way at least I'm doing 3 things instead of one thing.
I thought you'd go for the mountains. I was wrong about that. You know what? It's that technology, analytical thinking. I can do 3 things instead of 1, so I'm going to do 3.
Yeah, exactly. And I really, really enjoy long distance swimming. I just did a race with a 6.2 mile swim, and I shocked myself, how much I enjoyed that long distance swim. So I think there's some of that.
Isn't it amazing with those long distance swims? You get to that 2, 2.5, 3, and you get into this rhythm you can't believe you had.
Totally. It was a complete flow state. I mean, the pure textbook definition of flow. I mean, it was just, I literally felt like I was floating in space, and like nothing hurt. There was no fatigue. I wasn't tired. Just kept going and going, and 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles, 5 miles, 6 miles. When my canoe guy said, "We're done," he's like, "Head for the shore." I'm like, "We're done." I looked up at him, like, "We're done." I literally lost track of time and space.
Yeah, your canoe guy was tired as heck. He wanted to get to the shore.
Yeah, he's been out there for 5 hours.
My last question on Find Your Finish Line, I call it tri-table racing. It comes out of the Baja 1000 racing. I've got good friends that race down there. Okay. I've won it numerous times. I've been in the second seat. And they sit around a table after the race, call it table racing, reminiscing about what happened and things. So tri-table race with us about something that happened in triathlon or the mountain climbing that you can think of. Reminisce with us a quick story about it.
Reminisce. Oh, wow. A really inspirational, kind of spiritual story was Ironman Frankfurt. And I was hurting. I did all the rookie mistakes. I did not stay off my feet the day before. I stayed in the sun because I'd never been to Frankfurt before. Did a whole bunch of touristy things. Had a couple of beers, bad moves, in the sun, no rest. So by the time the marathon came around, I am hurting, like really hurting. A month prior, my uncle died. His name was Alex. A year prior to that, my father died. His name was Alex. I'm really looking for that, second wind, that runner side. Nothing's helping. And all of a sudden, I see Alex in chalk on the ground in front of me 3 times. I see Alex. Then I run another couple of 100 yards. I see Alex again. And obviously this was for somebody else. It wasn't for me. Or maybe I hallucinated this entire thing. But I got such an incredible boost. I'm like, my father and my uncle are looking down on me right now, and they're going to be the inspiration that I need to get across this finish line. And
wow, that is a fantastic story. And I'm sure you saw the name Alex on the street, as so many people put it down in chalk. But things
Yeah.
happen for a reason, and that was a big reason for you, huh?
Yeah, that was a huge reason. And that was the second win that I needed. And I got my act together, started running again. What's even funnier is I had messed up on what the cutoff time is. Because, in some venues, the cutoff is
Right.
16 hours, not 17. And in some places, it's 15. Anyway, long story short, I thought I literally thought I had like 10 seconds left to get to the finish line. And as I'm passing people and they're walking, and I start yelling, everybody I pass, I yell at them. I'm like, what are you doing? You're so close. Pick it up. You can finish. Why do you want a DNF? You're only 100 yards away. I must have said it to 3 or 4 people on my way down the finishing chute. And then I get there, and there's still a full hour left, which is why they were walking.
They're probably thinking, what's this jerk doing? I'm dying here. I know I'm going to get to the finish line,
Yeah, I'm like, putting on the most motivational spiel I possibly can, saying, what, you got to get a DNF, just jog for 10 more seconds.
That's what I love about this sport. Everybody's got some great stories like that get them to the finish line. Stephen Pivnick, good luck with the Everest, and in May we'll be watching you, and good luck with the book and speaking. And it was my honor to be able to be in the studio and read your audiobook. When do you think that's going to come out? What's the date on that?
It's probably I'm going to say July 15th. I'm just going to pick a number. It's going to be in the July timeframe. But people can stay tuned to my website, stephenpivnick.com, and I'll be announcing it there. And that website has links to my social handles where I'll be announcing it as well. And thank you again from the bottom of my heart for being part of this project and reading the book. I had such a wonderful experience with you.
It was a cool experience. Thank you very much for letting me do it. And thank you to everyone for another edition of Find Your Finish Line. Remember, you're the cause of your own experience. If you believe that, you'll keep your attitude strong, and that strong attitude will always get you to the finish line. Take care, everybody. My warmest aloha.